When we apply legal personhood to the United States government, as the law does, treating it as a person capable of owning property, entering contracts, suing and being sued, as the law does consider this entity as a person, we construct a psychological profile of this person based on their behavior over time. Let's examine and critique the government's actions primarily regarding marijuana prohibition of cannabis. Psychological profile of the United States government as a legal person. Diagnosis: malignant narcissistic necrotic sociopathy, with delusional projection disorder, including self-fulfilling prophecies. 1. Core behavior patterns. Chronic projection. The government accused cannabis and its users of causing violence, laziness, insanity, and moral decline. In reality, the government itself, through war, systemic violence, and mass incarceration, regularly exhibits these exact traits openly, e.g., accusing cannabis of causing madness while using the citizens' capital to fund MK Ultra and other real psychological warfare programs and tactics. Delusional thinking. Maintains demonstrably false beliefs about marijuana despite scientific refutation for decades about cannabis. Resists updating laws or admitting error. Justifies its delusion through fabricated authority, Schedule I substance, and circular logic, e.g., saying cannabis has no medical value, while holding the patent on its medical value. U.S. Patent Number 6,630,507. Narcissistic Grandiosity. Sees itself as the moral authority over all human behavior. Claims to protect the public while engaging in destructive, unconstitutional conduct, e.g., exports their own domestic drug war globally, while simultaneously being the world's largest incarcerator. Abusive control and gaslighting. Punishes dissent, e.g., imprisonment, fines, rewrites its narrative, e.g., legalization instead of nullification, and gaslights the public into thinking it's for their own good, e.g., pushing legalization to make people think their rights are being restored, while simply monetizing their illegal control. Self-fulfilling prophecy pathology. The government's fears about cannabis were never rooted in fact, but in hysteria, projection, and racial panic. Harry Anslinger famously claimed, marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others, and that reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men. He testified that cannabis use could lead to acts of murder or rape, stating, "There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana use." These racist fabrications led to the widespread criminalization of peaceful citizens. The fear was that cannabis would produce lazy, dangerous, amoral degenerates. Instead, the government became the very monster it described. While cannabis users created music, healed disease, and engaged in peaceful introspection, the government built the largest prison industrial complex in world history. It enslaved millions through court fines, probation rackets, and revolving door incarceration, especially targeting the very populations it originally demonized. It enacted unconstitutional surveillance, militarized its police, corrupted its justice system, and became a global exporter of war, weaponry, and psychological trauma. It feared cannabis would rot the brain, while its own institutions degraded into corruption, ineptitude, and brazen anti-intellectualism. While accusing cannabis users of laziness, the government produced the most bloated, inefficient, parasitic bureaucracy in modern history. While condemning moral depravity, it funded coups, destabilized governments, bombed civilians, protected child traffickers, and poisoned its own citizens under the guise of authority. In truth, the United States government projected its darkest traits onto a peaceful plant and its users, and in doing so, fulfilled its own prophecy of violence, decay, and moral collapse. 2. Violations and injuries committed. Fraud. Lied to Congress and the public repeatedly about the effects and imagined dangers of cannabis. Created an artificial category, marijuana, to criminalize a plant based on political and racial motives. Enslavement. Operated and profited with statistically unbalanced prison systems fueled by cannabis arrests, disproportionately targeting minorities and poor communities. This is modern Jim Crow, but worse. Generational psychological abuse. Induced fear, shame, and silence in families and communities about an irrefutably healthy natural plant with purpose since time immemorial, e.g., children growing up believing their parents were criminals for using medicine. Genocidal recklessness. Denied terminally ill patients access to healing therapies. Created policies that caused deaths through imprisonment, violence, and restricted access to medicine. Theft and extortion. Fines, asset forfeiture, court fees, and drug testing imposed on peaceful citizens, while claiming moral justification. 3. Required intervention and treatment plan. Admit guilt in public record. Repeal all marijuana, cannabis, and hemp-related laws. Nullify past convictions. Issue formal apology for decades of psychological, financial, and physical harm caused. Compulsory cognitive recalibration. Enact science-based policy rooted in facts, evidence, truth, and health, not criminalization, usurpation, racial ignorance, or bigotry. Require congressional hearings that include victims and scientists long silenced. Compensate all victims. Reparations. Financial restitution for all who were imprisoned, fined, or lost children, jobs, homes. Healthcare reimbursement for those denied treatment, or who suffered due to prohibition. Land grants, tax relief, and business priority for affected individuals and communities to participate in the free cannabis market. Erase all records of cannabis convictions, expungement with interest. Mandated social service. The government, as a person, should fund public education on the truth of cannabis, the history of its prohibition, and the lessons of generational trauma caused by institutional abuse. Psychological accountability. Undergo permanent public review, watchdog oversight, and recurring citizen panels to ensure the same psychological dysfunction cannot take root again like it did with the coronavirus. Imposed public enemy number 1 hysteria. 4. Diagnosis. In fact, this person, the United States government, exhibits long-standing harmful actions and personality traits that harm themselves and others deliberately, including a lack of empathy, manipulative tendencies, a pathological need to dominate, an inability to admit wrongdoing, a refusal to relinquish wrongful control despite massive public pressure. The proper legal and ethical response is not merely nullification, but judgment, restitution, and a complete abandonment of its undeserved authority over natural law, human liberties, and the authority of the people. Cannabis is not the one on trial. The government is, by every measure, psychological, historical, constitutional. It stands guilty of reckless, undeserved possession, and guilty of mind. This fulfills the complete scope of criminal law. Equal cannabis freedom for everyone is the only valid law. It always has been.